Why is there serious worry that Drake Maye and Devin Achane are some of the worst values on the board among AFC fantasy football draft picks in 2026? We break those two players down and 14 more on this edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Vinnie Iyer. Welcome to the show. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. My co-host, Michelle Majuk of NFL.com, is off. I'm from sportingnews.com, and we will continue looking at the worst value picks team by team. We went through all the NFC teams on the previous show. Michelle had you covered with the best value picks, good value picks there in the NFC and AFC. So if you missed any of that, check it out. This is wrapping that mini series that we've had looking at all these players conference by conference. I'll dive right into the fun here with the AFC East. And let's start with Drake Maye. Now, Drake Maye has been up there quite a bit. We know he's very expensive in the top tier with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson at quarterback. He's the third quarterback off the board. Very expensive for sure. And it's going to be very hard to duplicate those numbers. I mean, you had to cheat code it a little bit, manufacture it with some of the guys with touchdowns. It just was also a lower version of an elite QB scorer that we've seen at that position in a while. So I just can't justify going that high for Drake Maye. It's just too much here. When there's so much quarterback value, even in two quarterback leagues, I can't really recommend going for the QB3. By the way, at 35 on the board, so in the third round. Now, no one really wants to target a quarterback that early in most situations, unless in two QB leagues, everyone comes off in the first two rounds. But in this particular situation, I think you can get better value there. I think Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are a bit of a tier of their own. Then you also have those running cheat code quarterbacks behind, including Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels that are on the heels, as well as Jackson Dart waiting for his breakout season. So this is a little expensive for me for Drake Maye. If you're going to go after someone that you really like with some upside, I think Dart could be it. If you want to dig deeper, you can look for Tyler Shuck or Cam Ward among those second-year quarterbacks target. But Drake Maye is very expensive here, in relation to both the veterans and young quarterbacks on the board later. Now, Devin Achane, we've talked about this. This Dolphins offense is going in the wrong direction. The good news is he has to be a bigger receiver in this offense. Without Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, he's got to be the short area guy. The bad news is he also has a running quarterback now in Malik Willis. So the checkdowns tend to be running plays by the quarterback versus checking down and throwing. The guy usually can take off and run. So the volume in the passing game, Tua Tagovailoa was so intent on getting the ball out of his hand quickly. That was dump off, where Malik Willis can hang in there and throw the ball and look to do it downfield. Now, they don't have a lot of weapons. Their offensive line has some issues as well. It's just very risky right now with Devin Achane. I mean, to look at him a lot like last year. Last year, he looked safe, and he came through as safe, right? Everything was perfectly good for that. But now he's RB6 on the board. He's a first-round pick where you leave some people like Ashton Denty, Amarian Hampton, League Neighbors, Trey McBride, some really good picks in the first couple rounds that you could target here. But I do think Devin Achane, again, 12, pretty high for me, that he's not going to come close to duplicating some of the numbers with the volume in the pass game and just the overall production here in 2026. Now, Breece Hall, look, I've been up and down on Breece Hall. I just don't know if I want to attach myself too much to the Jets offense. I don't think it's too crazy. He's at 36, by the way, RB15, right behind Drake Maye on the overall board. Like, I can see Breece Hall doing some good things, but it could also blow up in your face. I don't know if I could expend too much. There are some good running backs around there. I think that's the problem with Breece Hall right now. You have Kyron Williams, again, Javonte Williams, Bucky Irving, Travis Etienne, really some really fine quarterbacks. Trayvon Henderson with some upside a little bit later there, and Quinshon Judkins and David Montgomery also in the top 24 that you can look at. So it's a little expensive for me to go after Breece Hall. He's kind of in a no man's land between still elite wide receivers and running backs that have a safer profile, less volatile, and on better teams. So that's where I'm going to be very careful with Breece Hall in drafts this season for sure. Now let's go to Buffalo, and that's the one team we've not covered from the East. Dalton Kincaid is the guy that I'm not really wanting to get a piece of this year. He's all the way at tight end 10. I've already said I don't like Juwan Johnson, tight end 12. I like Jake Ferguson, not bad. Value at tight end 11. I think you can have a better current investment. You have Rondé Gadsden. Right behind at tight end 13, you have Travis Kelce in the mix. You got to love Travis Kelce, ranked outside the top 12. A little bit safer pick there than Dalton Kincaid. So looking at this division from Drake to Dalton, again, some guys you want to avoid. That's Maye, Achane, Hall, and Kincaid at their current cost. Now, they could come down a little bit for sure, and then you're going to be more appealing to draft them. So watch out for that. But right now, they're too rich going into the summer programs here with OTAs and minicamp. Now, let's get through a couple more players here. We look at the Zay Flowers, the Ravens. We've been really down on Zay Flowers. We're not excited to take him at all. Right now, he's wide receiver 18 at 40th. No, we're not going there. I think the Ravens could reshape the way their passing game is. They have a new head coach, a new offensive system here. So Zay Flowers could be taking a back burner seat here. We'll see what they do at tight end. Do they add to Mark Andrews with Isaiah likely out? Do they add at wide receiver? There's a lot of things that the Ravens could still do to mix up their passing game to say that Zay Flowers is too rich for me at wide receiver 18. Now, the last guy I've talked about quite a bit because of the healthy return of Joe Burrow. This guy's numbers are affected by this. This is RB10, Chase Brown. Again, he's caught in that tough spot here with Saquon Barkley and really Kenneth Walker. When you look behind Jeremiah Love, Derrick Henry, some guys that you could look at right after on the board. So, again, running back is volatile to begin with, especially with some question marks, and you definitely have that with Chase Brown because he's a smaller guy. Can he hold up again, taking that beating? Will his role be more diversified in a committee approach? And if Joe Burrow returns, that means more passing touchdowns because, again, Brown was very heavily scoring involved, and that's what put up his numbers. So there you have a look at 6 players. We have 10 more to go as we go through all 16 AFC teams and look at the worst value picks on those teams for fantasy in 2026. We'll continue and start looking at why we're avoiding Shadur Sanders, DK Metcalf, also in the AFC North right after this quick break. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by TurboTax, and it's that time of year to almost get your taxes in. We're really at the crunch time here. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now is in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's a relief of walking in, meeting a real person, walking out, knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment now. All right, we will continue Locked On Fantasy Football in a moment as we look at the worst value picks so far in 2026 fantasy draft for all 16 teams of the AFC. Again, 6 down, 10 more to go. This is an opportunity to check out the Everyday Club. Don't forget, you'll get access to ad-free episodes as well as a group chat with me and Michelle and other listeners of the show as we get closer to draft time. That's going to be valuable to get some feedback and where you want to go there. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com. All right, let's get into some more guys that I'm avoiding. Shadur Sanders, I don't care how low he is. He's around quarterback 30 right now, 31. If you look at him he's way down on the board. I'm not going to be cute and go after Shedeur Sanders. Look, there's not a lot here with the Browns. So we had to improvise a little bit. Like Quinton Judkins, this is a vote of confidence for him. I like Harold Fannin Jr., but that's about it. I like this team. So I actually like both those guys. So we had to go to Shedeur Sanders here. So what I'm saying is Shedeur Sanders is not a value in any league because I don't think he's going to be the starting quarterback for much longer of the Cleveland Browns, whether they take Ty Simpson, a shot on another young quarterback. I just don't see this happening here with Shedeur. Like, he could hold on and surprise me, but I don't want to be a part of this. Don't get cute trying to get him as a sneaky quarterback too. That's just a public service announcement here. Let's move on to now the Pittsburgh Steelers. DK Metcalf, to me, is a little inflated with his value, even with kind of the built-in cost there at wide receiver 31. I think I'd much rather have, just a few picks later, Michael Pittman. He is at a very good spot behind him at wide receiver 42. He's a 96. So you get a really good discount if you just go after Michael Pittman. Now, they drafted some guys that didn't work out. So they went out and got Metcalf. Then they got out and traded pretty aggressive for Pittman. So I think Pittman is maybe being overlooked because Metcalf's the flashier, big speed guy. But Pittman is really steady and an overall good route runner, good hands guy, could get even more involved in the red zone. So I think if I had to go with one of the Steelers receivers, what I'm telling you is I'm going to leave DK Metcalf. I just think it's a little bit too off, right? He had some drops, some misconnections, especially with Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback. I think Rodgers will really appreciate the Michael Pittman Jr. kind of precision route running, really savvy type way of getting open, big slot ability, all these things that Pittman has as a more complete receiver here than DK Metcalf. So I think it's all coming to play. I think everyone says, okay, Metcalf's the one. Pittman is now the legit number two. I think Pittman could get it done with more volume, key targets, high leverage targets all the way through the red zone. And that's definitely where I would want to go. So that makes DK Metcalf not a very good value pick. Look, the Texans, they don't have a lot of people ranked high. So you even had David Montgomery at a reasonable cost at RB24. You had now CJ Stroud at wide receiver 22. Quarterback 22. And Nico Collins deserves to be ranked high where he is, and a bunch of good sleepers there with Higgins and Dalton Schultz and some of these other guys that you can really go after in leagues. Now, so we're down to one guy that I do not like. It's the kicker 2 on the board, Kamai Fairbairn. This is just a reminder. Don't overrate it. Don't take a kicker too early. Don't take a kicker in the last pick of your draft. Fairbairn is human. He's been pretty steady. He's been one of the more consistent kickers, long-tenured guy in there in Houston. But another public service announcement, do not take a kicker early in your drafts here. And again, that's where it had to go. This is also when we mentioned someone like Shedeur Sanders or Kamai Fairbairn that's saying that the Browns and the Texans have a lot of good value picks on the board for them. So good for them. Again, they're just overlooked a lot because everyone's not too excited about those offenses. Now, everyone, I think, is somewhat intrigued by the Colts offense with Alec Pierce back, and we have now Daniel Jones well in the men, but Jonathan Taylor is the too rich for my blood player here at RB4 at running back. So that puts him right behind Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Christian McCaffrey. There are a bunch of guys who could get that crown. I think James Cook has a better shot at it. Genty does, Omari and Hampton. You go down, and there's just so many guys that I'd rather take, including Jeremiah Love, I think, than Jonathan Taylor. I think the attrition can show up. The Colts offense, we'll see if Daniel Jones can actually be healthy on the field. They have some offensive line transition issues. So I just don't see Taylor holding up again. It seems like this happened the first time. He had a big year. Then he even faded down the stretch last year. He wasn't the same running back. He was carrying teams with some big individual fantasy performances. Then those kind of dried up. As soon as Jones went on the shelf, Taylor couldn't keep doing it here. So they need a legitimate complementary offense. We have to see how that plays out here with now Alec Pierce and Tyler Warren without the aforementioned Michael Pittman Jr. Will that all play in their favor? So things that we're really looking at with Jonathan Taylor, but I think that RB4 ranking is a little too rich here for what I'm going for. Now, Trevor Lawrence is a guy that I'm going to mention as well. He will be the final person we discuss in this segment. Trevor Lawrence is a QB10. Now, he did finish pretty well last year, and his numbers have been adjusted to drop him down a little bit. But you have Dak Prescott behind. We've talked about how he could be pretty good value. Justin Herbert, I think a little bit inflated ahead of him, but there's some really good values behind it. Quarterback Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes when he's healthy will be efficient. Bo Nix. They're just a little bit of no man's land here. And we're looking with Trevor Lawrence when you have some upside guys like the Caleb Williams and all those of the world. So I'm just looking at this and saying, look, we don't need to invest here at all in Trevor Lawrence. I love the guy. I mean, I wanted him to break out. He finally did last year with his receivers, but a few more things need to fall into place for Liam Cohen with Brian Thomas Jr. having a rebound there with Parker Washington, how that will work with Jacoby Myers and all those guys, and now the change in the running game. What will that do for what Trevor Lawrence can do? So a lot of things that we need to consider there in Jacksonville, but definitely you're looking at Trevor Lawrence. Again, the cost has been adjusted, but I think it can be adjusted a little bit more. I'd rather have him fall to like QB 12, 13 before I'm going to target Trevor Lawrence as a, quote, good value. He's just in that no man's land again, stuck with some guys that have better value ahead and better value after, right there where he's being taken. You're really throwing away some good pick capital at other positions. You got right now the rookie receivers, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon are there. You got Michael Wilson coming off his big year, Sam Laporta, Ramondre Stevenson. These are some of the names that are going around that spot. So I think that's where you can definitely go ahead of Trevor Lawrence. Now, we'll get into the final 5 players to avoid, overrated players in drafts, the worst value picks, however you break it down. We'll have that for you in our final segment. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and one position you still have to fill is sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says all. The minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend that energy doing the right thing. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job on the premium status level it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, time to close the show here and look at some other guys that are inflated. Tony Pollard. There were the trade rumors here that he was going to be out of Tennessee. Right now, he's the RB32 on the board, so really slashed everything. But this just tells you this is a player I do not want to draft. Like, he's had his heyday. He started to hit a wall a little bit, coming over from the Cowboys. Good for him to cash in and get that contract, the bag from the Titans. But things are kind of dwindling here that I'm not going to go after Tony Pollard. I'm not going to go after Tajay Spears. I want to see what happens totally in this backfield. I think more attrition is going to hit. You have a different approach here with your head coach, with the Brian Dable, so they can look in a totally different direction. So I'm not going to go by with Tony Pollard here for sure. And this is just a player to avoid for me overall. Now, Justin Herbert. I don't like the cost. I don't like that he's all the way up to QB9 when this is a very run-centric offense. And some of those concepts are going to be staying in place, even with Mike McDaniel taking over. In fact, they might be run heavier. The Dolphins were one of the more run heavier, check down type teams in the NFL. So if everyone thinks they're just going to open it up and go berserk the way they did with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua Tagovailoa that day, they don't have that same capacity. Like Ladd McConkey, not quite as explosive as some of those other guys I mentioned, Achane and Waddle and Hill. So that's a limitation right there. They got to figure out how Quentin Johnson fits in as an after the catch guy versus a vertical outside guy. And then Keenan Allen's ancient and may finally not be coming back. So when you look at all this, I think it's going to be a run heavy approach. They can play better defense here with Chris O'Leary taking over. So there's definitely some things that are going to say this Chargers team wants to go back to pounding it, go back to basics, play more of Jim Harbaugh style football. They tried to open up in the passing game. It's been okay. Greg Roman, however, probably misfit from the beginning, given that you didn't have Justin Herbert being a cheat code running quarterback here. So I think you have to downgrade Justin Herbert as we go forward. Now, staying in the AFC West, Cortland Sutton. Look, we have the newcomer, Jalen Waddle. He is now ranked at wide receiver 24. That's going to push Sutton's value down. He's at wide receiver 30. I just don't like the value 6 spots later. I'd rather take that Waddle chance there. You also have Troy Franklin and some other guys that you're looking at having a bigger role in this offense. They also should go out and get a tight end in the draft. I don't know if it's going to be early with Kenny and Sadiq, but they could look at Eli Stowers as well out of Vanderbilt. So I think they might get a significant receiving tight end to cut in a little bit more. So when you have those key targets and everything, we are just going in that direction with the Broncos and away from Cortland Sutton. Now, Brock Bowers is my Raiders choice. He's a little expensive there, and I just can't go with him that high when you have some really good values at tight end. Trey McBride, I feel a bit more comfortable with, but Brock Bowers is a variable changing situation. You might have more competent quarterback with more receiving options. I think they'll very much draft a wide receiver to help in the draft. So all that good stuff is something we want to watch here. And then Brock Bowers, again, a little too expensive. You have some good values there. I don't want to invest personally that high at tight end once I'm not seeing Trey McBride on the board. You got Colston Loveland in the next tier that you can look at. Sam Laporta, we've been talking up quite a bit on the show as well at tight end. Tucker Kraft, should he come back from his injury? Tyler Warren, Harold Fannin Jr. These are some guys in that mix. So I don't think you need to invest that high. I think McBride is in a class by himself, actually, ahead of Bowers right now because he does everything. He scores now, has the potential to do that even more. Bowers, again, I think the scoring is a bit of a wash. I think the volume will stay high with not many things changing. You know, Geno Smith is gone. You got Fernando Mendoza / Kirk Cousins there. We're still Jacoby Brissett. A little bit of different offense, we know that, but Michael Flores should still be targeting the tight end quite a bit there in the transition. So a lot of things to look at, but I just don't want to invest too highly in Brock Bowers versus Trey McBride. I'd rather wait for the values there and attack a different position. Now, Kenneth Walker, this is just a little bit of a cautionary tale. Like, we think Walker's going to be the workhorse, but he does have some limitations to his game, and we saw that with the Zach Charbonnet situation. Walker is also a guy that gets hurt a lot, so you need to really back him up. RB11 is very aggressive for him. He's ahead of even his teammate Rashee Rice, Jeremiah Love. You can take him ahead of Josh Allen and Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Lamar Jackson. These are some of the players that are going after Kenneth Walker III. Just be wary. Again, he's not the most dynamic pass catcher. He struggles at times in pass protection. I think the Chiefs just might have a situational back they got to put in. Maybe it's just on their roster already with Brashard Smith, but definitely something to look at there in Kansas City to be very careful with all that. So there you have it. There's a look at your worst value picks in the NFC. We've already looked at the worst in the AFC. So we got all our angles there covered, worst, best values early at this point. We'll get more into the NFL draft as we get closer. Yeah, we're almost here, just less than 2 weeks away. So we'll have that coming for you, Locked On Fantasy Football, all the good stuff, how to scout these rookies a little bit better. If you missed that show, I already had that up, the 6 most impactful rookies here that are looking like more immediate impact fantasy players in 2026. So a lot of good stuff that we have for you here that we look at on Locked On Fantasy Football. Michelle and I will be here. And then check us out on the Everydayer Club to get, again, ad-free episodes and get connected to us as we get closer to draft time for Locked On Fantasy Football. This has been Vinnie Iyer. Bye, y'all.